The country's overall real GDP growth has now been revised downward to 3.5%, while Ghana's expected economic growth of 3.9% for 2015 cannot be met. That is according to the Finance Minister, Setepe. The minister also told Parliament today in his mid-year review and supplementary budget estimate that non-oil real GDP growth has been revised from 2.7% to 2.3%. The end-of-the-year inflation has also been revised from 11.5% to 13.7%. But some members of parliament are worried about how the country has serviced her debts over the years, adding we could be heading towards Greece if care is not taken. So how has the country handled her debt over the years, and what are the implications of our inability to achieve the country's expected economic growth of 3.9% for 2015? This is today's big story. My name is Aisha Bryan. Now, government has revised the overall budget deficit target from 6.5% of GDP to 7.3%. The gross international reserve is also projected to remain at not less than 3 months of import cover. Ghana's total public debt stock, which stood at 53.1 billion cedis, has at the end of December 2030 increased to 79.6 billion Ghana cedis at the end of December 2014. Now, of the total public debt stock, external debt was 44.5 billion, while domestic debt amounted to 35.0 billion, representing 55.96% and 44.04% of total debt stock, respectively. Let's now listen to some members of parliament who feel we could be heading towards Greece if care is not taken.
Mr. Speaker, when you have not identified risk, when you don't see a real risk imminent coming facing you, you don't go for insurance. When there is no risk in any transaction, any activity, you don't just go for insurance for anything. You go for insurance to protect and try to mitigate the impact of whatever eventuality can happen. So the finance minister, Mr. Speaker, cannot tell us that the fact that he is going this way means that we have other problems somewhere else. Immediately you move from your traditional activity to something else. You should tell us exactly what has motivated you to go that way. What has happened to sovereign guarantee? The fact is that those who are investing in us, those who are lending, have lost confidence even in our sovereign guarantee, and they are looking for alternative instruments to support their loans. Mr. Speaker, like I said earlier, I just want to say a note of caution. All that I'm doing in my language, in the Akan language, we say that when the mouse decides to do bad things, harm you in your kitchen, no matter what you do, it will still fall in the palm oil that you put in the kitchen. So no matter what we say, the house will approve the loan. But I just want to quote from the Bible. Ghana should remember Lot's wife. We should remember Lot's wife. We should never forget the challenges Greece is facing at the moment. And where we are going, Mr. Speaker, I will say a note of caution that if we are not careful, one day we shall be utilized, we shall be used, we shall see exactly what Greece is going through at the moment.
But the finance minister Setepe feels otherwise.
I would like to contribute to the motion and to correct some erroneous impression that was created. Mr. Speaker, a guarantee is a guarantee, and as with insurance, you do not take insurance because you are careless. You take insurance sometimes because you are prudent, and somebody's carelessness could cause harm to you. Therefore, I do not wish the notion that was just portrayed, that the reason for going for a guarantee is because somehow you have mismanaged. Far from that. Mr. Speaker, to that extent, even a sovereign guarantee is not necessarily, which he advocates, the honorable member advocates, it's not necessarily given because you are in a bad state. You give it because you want to give assurance. And therefore, I think that we must understand the context of a guarantee. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, we cannot continue to offer sovereign guarantees for all our investments. And as I would indicate in the statement which I'm about to present, this is an instrument which middle-income countries and even advanced countries use. And it must be seen as an alternative instrument, not a substitute, an alternative instrument which adds to our diversity of insurance and guarantee instruments for our investments. It is the best approach for securing the Sankofa project, which is going to bring on board the IPPs. Mr. Speaker, let me also indicate that it is true that we have issued sovereign guarantees in 2013 and 2014 and in 2015. But the honourable member should also have informed the House that part of those funds were actually used to refinance the 2007 bond.
Joining me on the phone line is Godfrey Bokwin. He's head of finance at the University of Ghana. Good evening, sir. Many thanks for your time. Hello, Mr. Bokwin. We've lost him. We'll be trying to get him back on the line. We'll also be trying to get Mr. Kesley Hayford. He will be in the studio to join us in this discussion. But basically, we're reviewing the mid-year review and supplementary budget presented in Parliament today by the Minister of Finance, and we're looking at the country's debt stock, which as at the end of May 2015 stood at 90.0 billion Ghana cedis, representing 67.53% of the country's GDP. We're also looking at an interest rate, which we are told, inflation rate, which we are told could go higher because it's been reviewed from 17. It's been revised from. It's been revised to 6.3. The 6. Yeah. 13.7. It used to be 11.5 and it has been revised to 13.7%. And some members of parliament are also worried that our debt, if we're not taken care of, we could be heading towards countries like Greece who are really in trouble in terms of financial stance. We'll be back on today's big story. Welcome back to today's big story. We're talking the mid-year review and supplementary budgets presented to Parliament today. Minister for Finance has been giving some review to some of the sectors, and we're looking at basically the country's debt stand. Now on the line is economist John Gachi. Good evening. Many thanks for your time. Mr. Gachi, good evening. Many thanks for your time.
Good evening.
Well, quickly, your impression about the mid-year review and supplementary budgets presented to Parliament today?
Well, my impression is that it has outlined both areas of some success and areas of difficulty, what needed to be done. Those areas have been clearly outlined. We know our true level of debt as at now. We know what is being done to accommodate the debt within a reasonable level. We still do know that there is much more work to be done to overcome the energy crisis. So for me, it is revealing to the people of Ghana to know what has happened in the past 5 months in running the economy and what lies ahead of us.
The provisional debt stock as at the end of May 2015 stood at 90.0 billion, representing 67.53% of GDP. Now, the minister told us this is made up of 53.8 billion and 36.2 billion Ghana cedis for external and domestic debts, respectively. Are we safe as a country?
Are we what?
Are we safe?
Are we?
Safe, I mean.
Well, it depends on how you look at it. If you are somebody who is only interested in high level of debt, then you will say that we are in trouble. But if you also do know that debt must be related to economic programs and projects, socio-economic development, and enhancement of the well-being of the economy and for the people, then you would like to trace whether those debts indeed have contributed to the development of the economy. If they do, then the debt has been very good to us. But the point is that no matter how good debt is in nation building, there should be a level at which we must be very, very careful in accommodating more debt.
Right.
I think that is the signal that the finance minister himself put across today when he said that with the new development in the exchange rate front, the burden of debt is likely to go down. So we will be watching as we go along to see whether that will be realized to contain the debt level of the country.
And should we be worried also about this debts, especially now that some people feel we could be on the same pedestal with Greece?
The line is not clear, please.
I'm saying that a member of parliament today actually said that if we don't take care of our debts, if care is not taken, we could be in the same situation with Greece. And I'm asking if we should be worried about this.
Well, we should be worried about high level of debt, especially when it's not being managed very well. But if we are very realistic and fair, we will realize that the approach in managing the debt cannot be described as the worst in the world, though the debt level is very high. But I believe the approach in managing the debt is not bad, it's not among the worst debt management profile in the world. And the characteristics of the Greek economy, I think that there are many characteristics of the Greek economy that we do not have as is now. So it is good that the minority side in Parliament is raising their voice against the level of debt. But to go beyond that and describe it that we are almost at the level of Greece, I think that is that is too much. I do not think so.
Well, let's now look at the GDP growth. The country's overall real GDP growth has now been revised downward to 3.5%. What does this mean?
For me, that is heartwarming because the managers of the economy are now listening and they are now managing the economy based on what is practiced elsewhere. Elsewhere, when your environment within which you are managing the economy is not conducive, you do not maintain the growth prospects that you have. You do not maintain the same level of macroeconomic projection. You realign your macroeconomic projections to reflect the environment within which you are operating.
Right.
You know, in 2014, we have to talk so many times before the finance minister went to Parliament to review the projection downwards. Revise the projection downwards. But now they are doing on their own volition, which means that they are learning. There's no reason why you should maintain the growth prospects, the inflation prospects, and other prospects of the economy when you know that since last year you have been struggling with energy crisis, and that energy crisis has led many companies performing below expectations. Their capacity has dwindled. Right. Their contribution to the growth of the economy has come down significantly. It has affected imports into the economy, thereby affecting revenue prospects from international transactions.
Right.
And a lot of things have gone down as a result of the energy problem. You have had a series of harsh depreciation since last year up to today. That is not an environment for which you'll be expecting a certain level of growth prospect that does not match the environment.
Right.
So I think that they have responded to the environment in which we are operating. Of course, since economic management cannot be divorced from political activities, politicians will actually engage in blame game and the rest.
Right.
But in reality, growth projection, macroeconomic projection must reflect economic environment. And for me, that has been done.
And we are also told that expected economic growth of 3.9% for 2015 cannot be met. Well, the minister talks of recent exchange rate depreciation, and he says it's due to high outflows of foreign exchange and the rising inflation. But really, what has accounted for this?
What has accounted for what?
He's saying that our growth, our expected economic growth, that is 3.9% for 2015, cannot be met. And he has explained to us that it is due to the recent exchange rate depreciation, and also he also talks about the rising inflation. And I'm asking, what really has accounted for this?
Well, for me, there are multiple factors. To run the economy to achieve that level of growth depends on your revenue projection. Your revenue projection has been undermined significantly because of the development in crude oil prices. Therefore, if you go to the budget, about 70% of oil proceeds is supposed to be used to finance various projects in the budget. Those projects are supposed to contribute to the growth. And your revenue projection is being cut down by about 50%. That definitely would affect your execution of the budget. You have experienced huge depreciation for a very long time. That has resulted in inflation and has affected the cost of doing business and has actually affected the friendliness of the economic environment. These are the things that will not allow you to achieve your growth prospects. So putting all these things together, I think that is why the finance minister has decided that we need to lower the growth projection. So it is not only one factor. It is not only depreciation. It is not only energy problem of the country. It is also as a result of a downward development in your revenue projection, especially from petroleum.
Okay, but this International Monetary Fund, IMF thing that we went in for, there has been a lot of noise about it, a lot of argument there, but we're told today that the first part of the money has been paid, which is $114 million has been paid, and we're expecting the second tranche to also be paid later after we fulfilled all the requirements we're supposed to fulfill. What impact can this make in all of these?
Well, so long that the IMF is on board, any success that we are achieving now can also be attributed to their presence. So we have started achieving, getting some of the benefits of the presence of IMF, but we need to be very, very moderate in our expectation of the IMF program. It is not for nothing that the program is slated for 3 years. So I think we need to moderate our expectation of very quick and speedy performance of the IMF program. It will take some gradual process for the full effect of the IMF program to be related to the Ghanaian economy. So, but I believe gradually we are seeing some signs. We are only hoping that these signs will be consolidated and maintained for all of us to get our respite at the end of the day.
Briefly, Mr. Gachi, let's look at the non-oil real GDP growth also, which the minister says has been revised from 2.7% to 2.3%. What does this mean, and how can this also impact on our growth as a country?
Well, these are the areas of our budget system that I am not comfortable with.
Right.
My understanding is that we have invested hugely in the oil sector. It becomes part of the resources.
Right.
So whether we are talking about non-oil GDP or oil GDP, oil is a significant component of our budget now. oil is a significant resource that we are utilizing.
Right.
So whether you take it out or don't take it out, it is part of our resource. We just have to accept that.
Right.
That is my position on this matter. But it only means that you are taking GDP from the perspective of the performance of other sectors without including the oil sector.
But is it right to do that?
Well,
is
the
it
reason
right?
why they do that is just because of the history of oil performance in many economies that we have learned lessons from. So we do not want to behave as if we are only depending on oil. So at any given point in time, we want to show to the people of the country what the traditional sectors are contributing and what the oil sector is also contributing. But at the end of the day, we need to sum it up to see the overall effect of all the sectors of the economy. But it's just to alert us that we need to be very mindful that we do not overlook the contribution of the traditional sectors of the economy.
Well, many thanks to you, Mr. John Gachi. He is an economist. Many thanks for your submission and your contribution on today's big story. We have been talking about the mid-year review and supplementary budget presented today to Parliament by the Finance Minister. And he's been telling us the overall real GDP growth has been revised to 3.5, which we're told is good news. And he's also telling us that Ghana's expected economic growth of 3.9% for 2015 cannot be met. And that have also has received some arguments here and there by economists. We're also being told that our debt toll has risen, and it has risen from where it used to stand last year. And so many issues coming up with this budget statement. We have been speaking with an economist. We tried to get other views from other economists, but we couldn't reach them. But that's where we draw the curtains for today's big story. My name is Aisha Brian. We'll be back with today's Joy News Interactive.